You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a retrospective re-review of the film The Grey starring Liam Neeson, who was an esteemed serious actor, but in the modern era since 2008's Taken has become probably the most, even above Jason Statham, action-oriented star, synonymous with his own branch of Liam Neeson actioners, of which I am a PhD in. And there was a reason, because in 10 years ago, these films were getting more and more interesting. Sadly, in the modern era, it's been one misfire after another. So I haven't even watched the latest one, Retribution. Marlowe was supposed to be terrible. Backlight was terrible. Ice Road was terrible. The Marksman was decent. Honest Thief was... So you got a lot of really bad films. But if you go back a few years, there was a lot more to them. So we had Cold Pursuit probably near the very top. He was in Widows, that amazing film, and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. But there was also films like Run All Night, which is superb, and Non-Stop, which is really good, the one where he's on a plane, and lots of really interesting films. But The Grey is one that now perhaps stands out above Cold Pursuit as the best of all of them. It's a simple enough story of Liam Neeson is mourning the death of his relationship with his wife, so goes to a remote and hideously barbaric oil station or gas station in the middle of Alaska, full of people that are on the margins of society, mostly criminals, working horrendous conditions in the ice and snow. And his job is to guard the people out of these pipelines from wolves, from grey wolves attacking them. He, for the second time in a movie, puts a loaded rifle in his mouth to end his own life, and doesn't, which is exactly what happens in Cold Pursuit, which is a very different film. After that, we get the people flying back to normality in a small jet, flying back to Anchorage or somewhere that's a more populous place for some time off, and in a very eerie and effective plane crash sequence, things go horribly wrong, and Liam Neeson wakes up on the ice, and there's 6 or 7 of them left in this plane wreckage. And they discover that they're actually being attacked by grey wolves. So it's ironic that this film features Liam Neeson actually putting everyone in danger over and over again and making the wrong decisions. He realises there are 2 things possible. That one, the grey wolves are passing through and have found them because there's dead bodies everywhere. Or 2, they're actually close to the grey wolves' lair, in which case they're a threat and they're going to continue coming after them. It becomes apparent that the latter is the case, and they have a chase through the stunningly shot Alaskan wilderness, being pursued by wolves. Now, it didn't get gangbuster reviews on release, although I think I gave it 8.5 out of 10, I'm not sure. But I've seen this film multiple times now, and it's enriched each time I've seen it. It's widely regarded as a bit of a classic, I feel. But watching it again last night, it's a poem, really. It is the best film about toxic masculinity and the difference between toxic masculinity and positive masculinity that exists. All of the characters are horrible people. They exhibit the worst traits of masculinity in this film. But through the course of their actions and coming together and the trials and tribulations that they actually go through in this environment, they come out the other end as the best version of masculinity you can get. And I think it's become more powerful because of that. They all start as horrible, violent, bullish men who then become much more sensitive and the best person they can be. There's a very powerful death sequence quite near the start where Liam Neeson is shepherding someone through the final stage of their life, which is unusually powerful. And the people involved, which are often criminals and very violent people, and people that are used to prison yard aggression and one-upmanship and so on, break down into these much better versions of themselves throughout the film. The wolves are a cipher. The wolves are a metaphor for death. They're in the background, but they're a metaphor for mortality in this film. And what a man must... It's a very man film. I don't even know if there's a woman in the whole film, to be honest. What a man must do to be the best version of himself, to greet death that will find all of them, like the wolves will find all of them. It's inescapable. And what's the best thing they can do while they're here? I think the soundtrack is excellent. It's... Who did the music? Mark Strentfield. I looked it up and I didn't really know. He's done some big films, American Gangster, Body of Lies, Prometheus. But yeah, I've not really heard that name before, but it's got a great soundtrack. And the cinematography is absolutely wonderful in it. You can't go wrong with the Alaskan wilderness. But you do get a real sense of cold. And you do get a real sense of the violence of the wolves. And there's this, having just watched Puss in Boots, a fantastic film, the most recent Puss in Boots film, where there's this incredibly scary wolf in it that represents death. And that's the alpha wolf in this film. They represent death, and it's portrayed as a very natural thing. It's not like they're, up against some villain in a movie. It's almost painted as though the inexorable march of mortality is what's happening. And there's some, like Liam Neeson, I think, is as his performance is as good as he's been in any of these actioners. Even though it has a lot of good action in it, but it's a cerebral film. It's a thoughtful, cerebral film. Frank Grillo is as good as I've seen him in anything in this. He's a guy that starts off as the most obnoxious, horrible person who grows into so much of a better man as the movie progresses. Dermot Mulroney's in it. The other people aren't that well known. But it is, I think, a very moving treatise on masculinity in a way that people always say, I put a movie review up recently and I mentioned about how the film, The Brilliant Dead Man's Shoes, was about toxic masculinity. And that actually drew comments from people about it. I put it on YouTube and I got a few comments saying, you gotta go on. Not all masculinity is toxic. I know, that's why you put the word toxic in front of it. You don't say water is bad, because if you put the word toxic water in front of it, that's the thing denoting that the water is bad, not the masculinity part of it. So I think this is, if you haven't already seen it 7 or 8 times like I have, and I think that's a bulwark of something that is perfectly made, even if the people making it didn't understand what they were doing at the time. It's nearly pitch perfect. And that's because of the poetic and cerebral meditation on mortality and masculinity that this film presents. And it is very, very well made. Very atmospherically shot and soundtracked and performed. So I'm going to give, I'm going to give The Grey a rescore, which I rarely ever do, of a whopping 9.5 out of 10. I think this is a modern classic and will be regarded as one in years to come. So a huge 9.5 out of 10 for The Grey. A fantastic and possibly the opposite of a Jason Statham action movie. It's a very serious film. There's not a lot of laughs in this one at all. But a brilliant, brilliant film.